Hey, folks. Eric Stacklebeck here. Welcome to a Watchman Newscast live stream. It is Monday, April 15th, and the Middle East is on fire. Now, if you've been covering us, or if you've been following our coverage, I should say, over the weekend, you know that this thing is progressing between Iran and Israel. Oops, 1 second. Let me turn that down. There you go. Okay. Sorry about that. The wonders of live streaming, but here we go. Over the weekend, unless you were fast asleep for the entire weekend, you saw that Iran carried out an unprecedented attack against Israel. Over 300, actually right around 350 projectiles. We're talking attack drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles fired at Israel from Iranian soil. Now, folks, that's a new level because, as you know, if you watch this newscast on a regular basis, Iran usually acts through proxies. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the militias in Iraq and Syria, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the entire ring of fire that surrounds Israel, the Iranian-backed ring of fire. Well, on Saturday, look, the proxies were still involved, launching rockets alongside their Iranian overlords, but Iran launching directly from Iranian soil, a new level. And we've got a lot to break down, and we'll do it in a relatively short amount of time. So stick with us. We're talking Jerusalem, threats towards Jerusalem. Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, directly threatening to conquer Jerusalem. You're going to want to hear that, what he said. Russia now sending a destroyer to the region in support, no doubt, of their ally, Iran. And also, bigger picture, the big question we're all anticipating, right? When will Israel respond? And how will Israel respond? And look, the United States and European leaders, I shouldn't say the people of the United States, the Biden administration and European leaders are trying to tie not only one hand, but both hands behind Israel's back in this case. They don't want Israel to respond. They're basically saying, look, you had a great victory. I would argue a miraculous victory Saturday night in repelling 99% of these incoming projectiles, folks. Count it, 99%. So the Biden administration, and literally Joe Biden, reportedly said to Israel, or to Netanyahu, the prime minister, in a call after what happened Saturday night, look, you got the win. Just take the win. Meaning, look, 99% of those projectiles shot down, a miraculous display of missile defense. By the way, Israel, alongside its allies in the region, the US, UK, and interestingly enough, Jordan and Saudi Arabia, two Sunni Arab Muslim nations, helping Israel to intercept these incoming Iranian projectiles. Folks, that cannot be underestimated or understated. I want to break down the implications of that as well. If there's one silver lining, one positive thing that came out of Saturday night, it was certainly that. But the Biden administration and Europe, by extension, we're talking David Cameron, the foreign secretary in the UK, we're talking France, of course, Germany, I'm sure, saying, look, just take one on the chin. Take one on the chin. You had this incredible display of missile defense prowess on Saturday night. 99% of these Iranian drones and missiles did not get through the defenses. We helped you. We were aligned against the Iranian regime. Just pack up your bags and go home and just forget about it. Deterrence. Deterrence is the order of the day. At least that's what they're saying. And God willing, Israel does not listen to this for a few reasons. Number one, we've said here in the newscast, and by the way, if you miss any of our newscast, folks, especially for such a time as this, I believe these are Bible times and prophetic times, no doubt. And when the world's most volatile and chaotic region is going up in flames in real time, it profoundly affects all of us, no matter where we live. What happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. And here on the Watchman YouTube channel, we want to be your one-stop shop for everything happening in that region. So be sure to subscribe. It's absolutely free. And click the notification bell. Very important there, so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Look, over the weekend, we live streamed on Saturday evening as this Iranian attack was commencing, and we posted yesterday as well on a Sunday. So you never know when our team is going to post here. The news cycle oftentimes dictates it, but you don't want to miss any of our posts. Okay, why should Israel respond? That seems like a foolish question, right? A sovereign nation Iran, just launched 350 projectiles with deadly intent at another sovereign nation, Israel. So Israel, naturally, you would think, in not in la la land, but in the real world, has every right to respond and then some, to send a message to Iran to establish real deterrence, meaning the kind of forceful, powerful, and intentional message that makes the Iranian regime say, whoa, we don't want to do that again. That was a big mistake because Israel essentially unleashed hell on the regime and on Iran. No one's calling for a broader regional war. No one wants that. But by the same token, a broader regional war, folks, hear me closely here, is exactly what you'll get sooner rather than later if Israel does not respond here. Why do I say that? Iran already today said that Saturday night, their first direct attack on Israel, although it was repelled, that's regardless. Iran now believes it has carte blanche, essentially, to fire on Israel whenever it wants. Iranian officials, top Iranian officials, quoted today saying, one said, there has been a strategic shift, meaning before, as I said at the top, Iran would always act through proxy. I call it implausible deniability, where Iran would prod on its proxies and arm them and train them, of course, supply them with Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, etc., and say, you guys do it. And then we'll say, we had nothing to do with it. Our hands are clean. It was Hezbollah, Hamas. That's not us. Well, now that's out the window. And Iran said, top Iranian officials today said, look, they called it a strategic shift, meaning if there is any, quote, in their words, Zionist aggression against Iran in the days to come or any time in the future, Iran said, now we will react directly against Israel. They were absolutely emboldened by the events of Saturday night. Although, on one hand, clearly, it was a resounding victory for Israel in shooting down. Again, folks, most of these rockets, missiles, drones did not even enter Israeli airspace. 99%. They were shot down before they even entered Israeli airspace. Although I have a prayer request. There's a young 7-year-old girl, a Bedouin girl, who was critically injured by one of these Iranian projectiles. Not all of them were taken out. The vast majority obviously were, but pray for that little girl in the hospital right now. And if you don't think prayer works, folks, here on a live stream, we're not able to roll in footage and B-roll because it's a live stream. On the Stacklebeck Tonight Show, though, tonight on TBN, if you want to tune in, and you should tune in, every weeknight, Monday through Friday, it's my brand new nightly show, Stacklebeck Tonight, seen on TBN. If you don't have TBN, check it out on TBN Plus, which is the TBN app, or tbnplus.org. But TBN, the world's largest Christian television network, every Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight, on the show, we will show you stunning footage of rockets and missiles, folks, ballistic missiles directly over the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's footage that I will never forget. Stunning. Now, thankfully, those missiles did not reach their intended target. They were shot down, again, above the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. So Iran's feeling pretty good. Iranian missiles, and I'm on the Temple Mount frequently. I stay near there when I'm in Israel, and I'm in Israel frequently. Jerusalem is my second home. And my wife actually said, man, thank God you weren't there tonight. Could you imagine looking up from your balcony and seeing missiles incoming? But those missiles were taken out, and everyone, well, at least many of those who watch this newscast, I've been imploring you over the past several days to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. It is a biblical mandate in the book of Psalms. And I know we've got thousands upon thousands. Hey, we've got nearly 1 million subscribers here on the Watchman YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, again, join us shoulder to shoulder as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. We were praying for the peace of Jerusalem and praying without ceasing. Prayer works, and it worked in real time before our very eyes. Those rockets, those missiles, folks, were, they were above the Temple Mount, above Jerusalem. And then they weren't. Saturday night was miraculous. And some commenter said yesterday, no, it wasn't a miracle. It was just a great example of missile defense. No doubt it was. But come on. About 99.9% of 350 ballistic and cruise missiles and drones didn't even reach Israel? Come on. I think something else may have been at work there. Call me crazy, but I think the miraculous rebirth of Israel in 1948, against all odds, after 2,000 years of lying dormant, and the continued not only survival, but thriving of the world's one and only Jewish state against overwhelming odds, that alone, I believe, is proof that Israel's not just another country. That's why the entire world is obsessed with Israel, whether for good or for bad, mostly for bad, in terms of targeting Israel diplomatically, militarily. This tiny nation, the size of the state of New Jersey. I'm from the United States. I grew up right next to New Jersey. I've been there many times. It's tiny. It's a small state. But the world's attention is riveted to this one tiny patch of land in the middle of the Middle East. And Jerusalem is the center of that center. Why is that? Is that all coincidence? I don't think so. I think the continued existence of Israel is proof of the existence of God. But why must Israel strike against Iran? Well, it's real simple. When a bully attacks you and strikes you, he's going to keep doing it and keep doing it in increasing magnitude until you draw a line in the sand and you say, no more, we won't accept this. And that's the situation Israel finds itself in right now. Folks, picture this. Imagine that some of those ballistic missiles got through and hit their intended target. We'd be having an entirely different conversation today, would we not? Cruise missiles, drones, scores of Israelis killed. The intent was certainly there. Imagine if that happened. Right now, the world and the Biden administration, Europe are saying to Israel, look, you got the win, take it on the chin, just move on. Oh, really? Israel was this close from not, quote, getting the win and to feeling a whirlwind of ballistic missiles and drones killing Israelis and destroying Israeli military targets. And here's another thing to picture, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine that those ballistic missiles were nuclear tipped. That's the end game for the Iranian regime. That's why they are feverishly working on nuclear weapons as I speak, in real time. The goal is to one day fire nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles at Israel. Don't kid yourself. And it's interesting to me that the Temple Mount, once home to the two Jewish temples, Solomon's Temple and the Second Temple, also known many times as Herod's Temple, where Jesus taught, where Jesus chased out the money changers, where Jesus ritually cleansed himself below in the pool of Siloam before ascending the road of pilgrimage up to that Second Temple. Call me crazy, kind of has some major significance for Jews and Christians. It supposedly has major significance for Muslims as well. Muslims consider it the third holiest site behind Mecca and Medina in the Islamic religion. Then why is Iran firing missiles that very well could have hit the Temple Mount, where the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque stand today? Why would Iran do that? Very interesting. Yet Israel, in shooting down those missiles, potentially saved those sites atop the Temple Mount. Folks, check out the footage tonight on Stackleback Tonight. Again, 7:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on TBN. You'll see it. How would the Islamic world have reacted if those Iranian missiles struck the Temple Mount and caused serious damage? But Israel won't get much thanks for that, for intercepting those missiles. And I think that, again, proves the lie of this Hamas narrative and Iranian regime narrative that it's all about Al-Aqsa and Israel wants to destroy Al-Aqsa, etc. Well, Israel intercepted missiles that seem to have been heading straight for Al-Aqsa over the weekend, fired by an Islamist regime, the Iranian regime, a jihadist regime. Interesting how that works. Speaking of Jerusalem, if you don't think that Iran covets Jerusalem as part, look, The Iranian regime, Hezbollah, Hamas, they all use Jerusalem, or as they call it, Al-Quds, as their rallying cry. When a Hezbollah terrorist is killed, they say he was martyred on the way to marching to Jerusalem. It's all, and the prophet Zechariah laid this out. Zechariah 12, folks, you know this. If you know your Bible and you watch this newscast, we're at those days today. In a minute, I'm going to read you the comments by Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei regarding Jerusalem and why I think it's a big deal. I think it's an even bigger deal because of what Zechariah wrote, that a day is coming when Jerusalem will become like a burdensome stone. And though every nation in the world will be gathered against it, all nations, anyone who tries to touch Jerusalem will be cut to pieces. So God's very clear. He called it a cup of trembling, a burdensome stone for the world. Here's what Khamenei said about it, about Israel. And by the way, we're going to talk about the Israeli response that is surely coming as I come to you, 5:15 p.m., Monday, April 15th. I can tell you that there have been deliberations throughout the day in Israel's war cabinet led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders, and they're deliberating how they're going to respond. And again, if they don't respond, Iran's going to do it again. I mentioned a few minutes ago that Iran said, hey, this is a new status quo. We're going to attack Israel directly. They're emboldened by what happened Saturday night. Yeah, a big success on one hand. On the other hand, Iran considered a success because they fired off these barrages of projectiles and nothing's happened to them, at least yet. I believe that Israeli response is coming. Let's get to it in a minute. But real quick, I do want to read that tweet. I want to talk about Russia, too, and some moves that are troubling, but in the region. But in Hebrew, talk about a mocking act by the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei. In Hebrew, he tweeted, and how does he have a Twitter account or an X account? That's very interesting. So many accounts have been banned, and Elon Musk has cleaned things up a bunch on X, but Ayatollah Khamenei still has one. That's interesting. And he's had one throughout. I don't believe his account has ever been suspended, but I digress. He writes, Al-Quds will be in the hands of the Muslims. Al-Quds, another name for Jerusalem. The tweet was accompanied by footage of Iranian missiles being blown up by Israeli defense systems over the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. So he said, look, holy Al-Quds will be in the hands of the Muslims, and the Muslim world will celebrate the liberation of Palestine. And he wrote it in Hebrew. And again, you see how Jerusalem is used as a cudgel by the enemies of Israel. It's a way to rally the Muslim world. Al-Quds is our rallying cry. It's the reason why Hamas launched a war against Israel in May 2021. It was a major reason for October 7th, or at least Hamas painted it as such. It's all about Jerusalem for them. And Khamenei tweets out the images that I talked about of missiles above the Temple Mount. Iranian missiles above the Temple Mount. You just heard it. And you just saw it. Khamenei proudly tweeted that out because, again, folks, yes, those missiles were shot down. Yes. And yes, 99% of those projectiles were shot down writ large on Saturday night. But still, the Iranian regime sees it as a victory. The mere propaganda value for him of Iranian missiles above the Temple Mount, the mere propaganda value of the people of Israel waiting with dread for 48 hours, the Iranian response over the weekend, and then the drones took several hours to arrive on Saturday night, the cruise missiles as well. Ballistic missiles travel much more quickly. This is all psychological terror and psychological warfare. So Iran sees that as a victory. But again, Israel can turn that all on its head, folks, with a forceful response. Now, you might say, oh, no, don't do that. Like the Biden administration is saying, like European leaders are saying, don't do that because it's going to spark a wider regional war. And I said earlier, and I didn't finish the thought, I'll finish it now. If Israel does not respond, it will certainly spark a wider regional war sooner rather than later, because Iran will be emboldened and they will try this again. And there's no guarantee that Israel will have the kind of great success, miraculous success that it had on Saturday night. Guaranteed 110%, no doubt, Iran will do this again if Israel does not respond forcefully. That's coming. Folks, the lessons of October 7th. I said on Stacklebeck tonight, again, you can watch it tonight, that the Middle East will never be the same after April 13th. That was Saturday night, April 13th, 2024. Either an emboldened Iran will now be on the warpath and targeting Israel directly on a regular basis, or Israel is going to change the entire paradigm in the region and strike Iran so hard that Iran will never even dream or think twice about hitting Israel directly ever again. That's what we have. Either Iran builds momentum from Saturday night, despite the stunning failure. Look, 99% intercepted. On one hand, they have the egg on their face. But on the other hand, the mere fact that they did it, or at least tried to do it, and the mere fact, if, and I don't believe this will be the case, but if Israel did not respond in a forceful manner that left a mark, so to speak, Iran's going to say that wasn't so bad. If Israel's response is, okay, we blew up a missile factory, Iran's going to say that wasn't so bad. It was worth it. Saturday night was worth it. Let's do it again. That's all they got in response. Folks, this is how it works. This is not brain surgery. So now the ball is in Israel's court. And now the world is awaiting once again. And now all of a sudden, as it always does, I mean, look, I said the world will never be the same after April 13th. The world was never the same after October 7th, or should we say the Middle East. And just as on October 7th, now in the aftermath of April 13th, the conversation quickly moves from, oh my word, Israel was attacked. This is horrible what Hamas did. This is horrible what Iran did. Israel has every right to defend itself. This is horrible. We condemn it. The conversation quickly shifts to Israel. Now, wait a minute, Israel. The focus all of a sudden shifts very quickly to Israel's response. Days after October 7th, Israeli planes were barely in the sky striking Hamas targets in response to the biggest butchery of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And already there were shouts of ceasefire now. And already, not even 48 hours after Iran's barrage, which came in waves, already, don't respond. Israel, just sit back, take the win, quote unquote. Already. Now the world is focused on Israel and what Israel is going to do, just as it was after October 7th. Funny how that works, or should I say maddening how it works. And folks, make no mistake about it. Again, I don't think that the ceasefire now crowd is considering what could have happened and what Iran intended to happen. Really, you could say what should have happened. Not many nations in the world, folks, would have been able to shoot down at a 99% success rate 350 projectiles coming its way. Israel had help, of course. Again, US, UK, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, amazing. But still, that's a lot of projectiles. That's a lot of missiles, a lot of drones. So there are many who seem to be forgetting that. The miraculous nature, the stunning nature of the repelling, the intercepting, the shooting down of these projectiles Saturday night, number one. And number two, you're forgetting the just complete brazenness of the act by Iran. Hey, this was the first, to put this in perspective, ladies and gentlemen, this was the first direct attack from another nation state on Israel since 1991. You might say, what are you talking about? Israel's had wars since 1991. Yeah, against non-state actors. Hamas and Hezbollah chief among them. They're not nation states. Now, Hamas rules over a strip called Gaza with an iron tyrannical fist, and Hezbollah rules over the southern half of Lebanon with a tyrannical fist. But neither of these are government nation states, government entities. They're terror organizations. They're terror paramilitary organizations. That's who Israel's fought since 1991. What happened in 1991? A sovereign state, Iraq, under Saddam Hussein. Remember this, anyone? Am I dating myself here? Showing my age? The Gulf War, the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein launched dozens of Scud missiles at Tel Aviv. Some Israelis died. Israel at the time stayed its hand. Israel did not respond. Why? Because there was an international coalition saying to Israel, hey, if you respond and get involved in this, then the coalition is going to break up, because there were Arab nations in that coalition who at the time, look, Israel, the Abraham Accords were a paradigm shifter as well. But 33 years ago, Israel and Arab nations, other than Egypt, Jordan, were not really in the space where peace was possible, needless to say. So I think Israel, but I think Israel needs to respond here, not in a way that we want a broader war. Israel needs to respond here to Iran to prevent a broader war. Now, Iran's foreign minister said they'll respond. Iran will respond to what Israel does. Okay, we'll see. But if Israel's response is forceful and painful enough, then Iran will think twice about responding, and certainly about responding directly nation to nation as it did Saturday night. Now, this was all sparked, of course, 2 weeks ago today, when Mohammad Reza Zahedi, who was a top Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps general with loads of blood on his hands, American blood in terms of engineering attacks on American troops in Iraq, Israeli blood in terms of, look, was in charge of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guards operations in Syria and Lebanon, also had a major hand in Hezbollah's operations. He was very evil, and I read today someone was saying, look, he was almost the equal of the not so dearly departed terror master Qasem Soleimani, who was eliminated in January 2020. This was a massive blow to the Iranian regime. Zahedi being taken out along with 6 other high-ranking Iranian officials, Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps officials in Damascus. So Iran felt like it had to save face. You might say, why did Iran do this Saturday night? They felt like they had to save face. Did they? What do you think? We've got a great chat going here. What do you think? Was that enough? Does Iran do this and declare victory, call it a day? You know, it's interesting. The last time before 1991 that Israel battled sovereign nations was the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Egypt, Syria. And afterwards, Egypt declared victory. Egypt had some early gains in that war before the IDF. Listen, folks, the IDF recovered so strongly in the Yom Kippur War after initial defeats and a lot of concern that things were going to go off the rails against Israel's favor. Israel recovered so quickly that eventually Damascus, if the IDF wanted to, it could have rolled tanks into Cairo and Damascus. Israel won the Yom Kippur War, but it paid a heavy price, but it did win the Yom Kippur War ultimately. And yet, Egypt declares it as a great victory for Egypt. Why? Because of those initial gains, which were eventually turned back. But Israel saw it as saving face. After the debacle of the 1967 Six-Day War, where the Egyptian Air Force was destroyed on the ground. Folks, the Six-Day War was essentially over before it began when Israel destroyed the Egyptian Air Force on the ground. So 73, some initial gains. Egypt said, we'll take it. Victory. You know, I interviewed Anwar Sadat's widow, Jehan Sadat, a few years ago. And I was struck when she said, when we defeated Israel in 1973, I said, could you rewind that? When you defeated Israel, Israel won the Yom Kippur War. But folks, they claimed it as a victory merely because of the initial gains. They felt like, hey, at least we stood a fighting chance this time. We saved face. So did Iran accomplish that on Saturday night? Even though the missiles were shot down and the drones overwhelmingly, did Iran save face? It may not matter now because Israel right now is deliberating what comes next. And the big conversation now is, okay, the big word the Biden administration has used over the months is proportionate. Every time Iranian proxies attack U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria, the Biden administration says, look, we need a proportionate response. No. Proportionate means they're going to do it again. You need a fierce response that will send a message that they will never try this again, meaning Iran and its proxies. So the whole thing with Israel, the conversation now is the Biden administration urging, well, if we can't rein them in, it has to be proportionate. And that's my concern here, folks, that Israel's hands will be tied and that Israel will not have the kind of impactful strike it should have against Iran in the wake of this unprecedented attack on Saturday night. We shall see. But I will say about the foreign policy here in the United States for the past 3.5 years since Joe Biden took office, the world's on fire, ladies and gentlemen. Number one, Afghanistan, the debacle of August 2021, which opened the floodgates and showed the world that there was weakness in the White House. It became open season. Russia invaded Ukraine not too long after. Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th. Iran directly attacking Israel on April 13th. China breathing down Taiwan's neck. Israel and Hezbollah ready to go at it for another round. Israel and Iran possibly on the verge of a major war. Russia, I mentioned earlier, real quick, what Russia's up to in the past few days. Sending, let's see, quoting this directly, Russia has moved a supersonic missile warship to the Middle East after the Iranian attack on Israel, all the while calling for restraint. Look, Iran and Russia are thick as thieves these days, folks. They are close allies. It's a formal, full-blown military alliance. And now Russia has sent a Navy frigate armed with supersonic missiles into the Mediterranean Sea via the Suez Canal just hours after Iran attacked Israel, and the Kremlin has confirmed the ship's presence in the area. All of this in the past 3.5 years. Now, President Trump said, look, if I was in office, this would have never happened. What do you think? Hey, think what you want about Donald Trump. And we've had some people criticize him here in the chat. Some people love him on the chat. Think what you want. But what do you think of that? Is that a true statement? Would this have happened if President Trump was in office? I don't believe it would have. I don't believe much of the foreign policy madness would have occurred under President Trump. What do you think? I'd like to get your thoughts on that. I believe that weak men create hard times. And I believe we're seeing that in real time right now. When Joe Biden says don't to Iran and don't to Russia, he was scoffed at, and they did. So much for don't. But what do you think? I think it's pretty obvious. And in the prophetic sense, and we'll talk about this more during the week, I'll be coming to you every day as this all unfolds. As that Israeli response could come, hey, I'm with you now. This might be in real time. You might be watching this a few hours later after we went live and it happened already. But we're here and we'll keep coming to you. We'll talk about the prophetic this week. Is this laying the groundwork? Some are already saying for the war of Gog and Magog, laid out in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Are these birth pangs in terms of that, in terms of what's to come, larger prophetic wars? I believe they are. Is this a step in that direction with Iran attacking Israel directly? Perhaps. Know this, the prophetic chess pieces are moving on the board. Now, Israelis over the weekend, and I was talking to them on a regular basis, including our good friend Yair Pinto of TBN Israel, they were in shelters, they were hunkering down as missiles were exploding overhead. Not very pleasant. A lot of people ask me, how can I help Israel? Folks, one great way to do that is our good friends at Meir Panim. Now, I don't endorse many companies here on the channel, but I do endorse Meir Panim strongly because I've worked with them on the ground in real time, shoulder to shoulder. mpgive.org. Meir Panim is an incredible Israeli humanitarian organization that is helping Israel's most vulnerable in times like these, in times of war. There are tens of thousands of Israelis in southern Israel and northern Israel evacuated from their homes, living out of suitcases and living in hotels. Israel could use a few good friends right now. And that's where I believe followers of Jesus can step up and be exactly that. And we have a mandate to do exactly that. A Genesis 12:3 mandate to bless the people of Israel, especially in their time of greatest need. This is the greatest time of need for Israel since 1948, since Israel was miraculously reborn. Mayor Panim, incredible soup kitchens. You might say, well, soup kitchen? No, this is state-of-the-art, beautiful facilities where Holocaust survivors, children, the elderly, the homeless, the evacuees, reserve soldiers are being fed. And Passover is almost upon us, folks. A time where Israelis come together, perhaps the most important time on the Israeli calendar. Come together as families. Israeli families won't be able to do that this year. There are soldiers in the field at war, reserves, dads without their kids, without their wives. Mayor Panim stepping in, supplying meals, aid, comfort, humanitarian supplies, shelter, all the above. mpgive.org. Check them out. mpgive.org. Our good friends at Mayor Panim, proud to stand with them here on the Watchman. Hey, keep it all in prayer. God is on the throne. Are we entering the time of Jacob's trouble? A lot of questions. You guys keep debating, keep the chat going, even after I go off the air. But tomorrow we'll be back. Until then, hang in there. Keep praying. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the ultimate Iron Dome, the hedge of protection that only God Almighty can bring, the God of Israel. Until tomorrow, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.